I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. Before we take roll, I'd like to acknowledge that Senator Donate is attending as an alternate for Senator Orenshaw today. Ms. Kramer, would you please take the roll?
Senator Donate?
Here.
Senator Severs-Gansert?
Here.
Assemblywoman Dickman?
Here.
Senator Lang?
Here.
Assemblywoman Carlton?
Here.
Assemblywoman Gonzalez? Assemblyman Matthews?
Here.
Chair Miller?
Here. And please mark Assemblywoman Gonzalez present. She is on her way. With that, before we begin, I'd like to make a few housekeeping announcements. Those that are attending virtually, we do have 2 senators that are virtual today. Please make sure to keep your camera on so that we know that we're maintaining quorum. And of course, all of us should make sure we turn off our phones, our laptop sounds, anything else that makes noise that could be disruptive during the meeting. Meeting materials, including the work session document, can be accessed on the committee's webpage located on Nevada Legislature's website. Today's agenda includes a work session during which the committee will decide which legislative measures it will request for the 2023 legislative session, as well as any other actions the committee may endorse. We will have a public comment at the beginning of the meeting. And again, we will have one at the beginning and the end. And we will ask that everyone keeps their comments to 2 minutes per person. Members of the public can provide testimony in several ways, all of which are listed on the agenda. The most common way is that individuals will dial in. That phone number is 1-669-900-6833. When prompted for a meeting ID, please enter 896-9214-3550, then press pound. Broadcast and production services staff will indicate when it is your turn to speak. If you'd like to send written comments, you may do so by emailing at loeinterim@lcb.state.nv.us or mail to the Research Division at 401 South Carson Street, Carson City, Nevada, 89701. Again, all of this is identified in the agenda. Of course, we are here live today in Carson City and in Grant Sawyer in Las Vegas. With that, I would like to open up public comment. So broadcasting, please open up the lines. We're going to take a few minutes. I don't see anyone here coming forward in Las Vegas to approach to make public comment. Assemblywoman Dickman, is there anyone there in Carson City?
We have people here, but they don't want to speak right now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. So we'll wait for the to see if anyone is on the phone lines.
Thank you, Chair. To participate in public comment, please press *9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Again, if you wish to participate in public comment, please press *9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Stephen Cohen for the record. Stephen with a V. Cohen as in the Assemblywoman, no known relation. Just want to draw the committee's attention to the written remarks that I submitted for work session topics C like Charles and D like David, including an amendment for topic D like David. With that, Madam Chair, thank you, and I yield.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cohen.
Good afternoon. This is Dora Martinez. I represent the Nevada Disability Peer Action Coalition. Could you all see me? Could you all hear me?
Yes, we can. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of the members of the Interim Committee. So I want to ditto the caller, Stephen Cohen, We do support C and D. The D on special needs needs to be people with disability. I really thought the HAR 1, I thought it changed all of the wording pertaining to people with disability. So I echo his comment. Madam Chair, I just want to bring to your attention that it was really hard for me to try and find a PDF on this work session, and I know it's out of your hand, but I want to continue to see who will hear me and help me to help. Is it the IT director, Erdos? I've been trying to reach out to her to let her know and try to help her to make sure that the documents in this LCB institution are accessible to all, because PDF, when they are embedded and they are image, iPhone or Android cannot read pictures for people with who are blind, such as myself. So I just want to thank Miss Stephanie, who is the library research, who works for the library research desk, who was able to help me real briefly to, because I was not sure about the HAR1 and the D, as in Delta, section on this work session. What was it about? So I just want to inform you, and we as blind people, especially myself, I just want to be on the same playing field and not come on these things and sound ignorant due to the fact that the Ms. Erdos and the LCB, maybe just her, I don't know, but it's not accessible, and I just do not want to sound like I don't know what I'm doing, because I really want to advocate for all people with disabilities. So with that, I thank you for your time. Have a good day.
And thank you for that. We appreciate you bringing that to our attention, because we want to make sure that that everything is accessible for all Nevadans as well. So we appreciate that, and it is noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working, but there are no more callers at this time.
Okay, thank you. Again, we will have another opportunity for public comment at the end of the work session. With that, we will move on to the next agenda item Item 3, which is approval of the minutes for the meeting that occurred on June 17, 2022. All members were emailed the draft minutes, so I know that everyone's had an opportunity to review. Committee members, are there any questions on the minutes? Okay, not seeing any questions.
Move to approve.
At this point,
May I move to approve?
thank you. Thank you so much, Assemblywoman Dickman. We have a motion to approve the minutes of the committee meeting from June 17th from Assemblywoman Dickman. Do I have a second? I'll second. I have a second from Assemblyman Matthews. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and I also see hands raised from our two senators, so thank you for that. With that, it's unanimous, or it is unanimous. So with that, the motion passes. Thank you. At this time, we are going to take a short recess. I'm planning on maybe a 10-minute recess. I will let you know if anything changes, but just so that everyone watching virtually and our other committee members that are virtual and in Carson City are aware of what's happening. So let's take a 10-minute recess. All right, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. We will move on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 4, which is the actual work session portion of tonight's meeting. The purpose of the work session is for the committee to decide which legislative measures, if any, it will request for the 2023 session of the legislature, as well as which letters of recommendation or support it will send to interested parties. Staff has assisted in preparing a work session document, and again, there is a revised work session document to help guide us through the work session. The document contains a combination of recommendations based upon testimony heard by this committee throughout the interim, as well as recommendation from committee members. The recommendations outlined in the document are not necessarily set in stone. If the committee is so inclined, recommendations may be amended prior to the vote. Staff will guide us through each one of the items in the document. There will be an opportunity to discuss each, and then, if you are so inclined, I will accept a motion to approve them. At this time, I'd like to turn things over to Ms. Prohl to begin. Excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Haley Prohl with the Research Division of LCB. So just a reminder, as nonpartisan staff of the LCB, I neither support nor oppose any proposals that come before you today. You should all have in front of you the work session document. It's also available on the committee's webpage. The document has been prepared to assist the committee in determining which legislative measures it will request for the 2023 session of the Nevada Legislature, as well as other actions the committee may endorse. The members of the committee do not necessarily support or oppose the recommendations in this work session document. The recommendations have been organized so that committee members can review them and decide whether they want to accept, reject, modify, or take no action on each of the recommendations. The document organizes the proposals by topic, and they are not preferentially ordered. Committee members are advised that LCB staff, at the direction of the chair, may coordinate with interested parties to obtain additional information for drafting purposes or for information to be included in the committee's final report. And with that, I will start with the first recommendation in the work session document under topic A, review of funding for voting systems. Recommendation A1 is to request the drafting of a bill to provide that if a county was allocated or awarded state money from the legislature or the Secretary of State for the purchase of voting machines, and the county wishes to discontinue using a voting machine purchased with such money to instead implement voting by printed ballot, the county must return the money originally allocated for the voting machine. And this recommendation was recommended by Assemblywoman Carlton and Chair Miller. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Assemblywoman Carlton?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. And this, we did have a conversation about this, and it's my understanding that this will not be retroactive. We're not going to change the rules of the road after we've asked people to already drive down the road. But I believe moving forward, if the state gives dollars to a county after they're testifying that they would like to receive an appropriation so that they can update their voting machines, and then they decide that they don't want to use those, I believe it's only appropriate that the taxpayers either get a refund or get the voting machine back. We know that there are areas of the state that don't have nearly as much access as they would like to. So moving forward, we would have never thought that a county that came to us and asked for dollars to purchase something would just put them in a closet and not want to use them. It was kind of unheard of in the past. Usually when we give folks money, they're thankful and they use it. So I think there's a new day out there, and we need to address the possibility of this happening in the future. It's very sad to think that state dollars, taxpayer dollars, were given to a county and they bought machines and they're just gathering dust. So I think we need to address this in the future.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Are there any additional questions? I'll first go with Assemblywoman Dickman and then Senator Gansert. I do see your hand. Assemblywoman Dickman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The fact that this isn't retroactive makes it a little easier to to possibly support, but Assemblywoman Carlton mentioned either pay the money back or return the machines. So why don't we have in this bill return the machines, or in this BDR suggestion?
That's a wonderful question, and that was something we looked into, but I will let Ms. Prohl elaborate on it, but it was a contractual issue that we just can't take from, okay, if this county doesn't want and another county wants more, it was a contractual issue with the company. Is that correct, Ms. Prohl?
Haley Pearl, Committee Policy Analyst. Yes, that's correct. Due to contractual limitations, they cannot be reallocated to other jurisdictions.
So could the state take them back and sell them back to the company, or?
Haley Pearl, again, for the record, the machines go back to the voting machine vendor. The machines do not go back to the state.
I think, Assemblywoman, are you asking if they're refundable? If the state was to sell them back to the company? If that was an option?
Yeah.
Is that your question?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Haley Pearl, for the record, I do not believe they are refundable. They just have to return the machines and the money is already spent. Thank you.
So one more quick question. If the machine that they were allocated money for, that they bought or got with state money, became obsolete, would this bill, as if it passed, make it so that they would still have to pay money back to the state because they couldn't use the machine anymore?
No, Assemblywoman, and they would have the opportunity, because we know with technology that things do become obsolete and require updates and upgrades. So with that, just like before, they'd have the opportunity to approach the state for that additional funding if that was necessary.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd also like to add as well that at this moment in time, as Assemblywoman Carlton said, we're looking at this moving forward. At this moment in time, there would not be a county that would actually fall under, having to return the funds to the state. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that at this moment, no one is under that qualification that they would be required to return the money to the state. This would be for going forward because, again, of our concern and sensitivity and wanting to make sure that our Nevadans, their taxpayer dollars, are efficiently and effectively used. Senator Gansert, do you still have your question?
Thank you for the clarification. Right now, we have a decentralized voting system, but I know we are spending money for the Secretary of State to convert to a centralized voting system. And I didn't know how if that would affect this type of bill draft.
Ms. Pearl says no.
Okay,
No, it
all
would
right.
not impact it.
Given that it's not retroactive, I'm going to support it. But I think it's really important that we make sure that everybody has the ability to vote, right? So we have to just be careful and making sure that we have a system where we have access for everyone. And there may be some counties that choose, not to use electronic machines, but we have to make sure they have access. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And I echo the fact that we want to make sure that all Nevadans have access to voting, as well as we want to make sure that our state dollars are used properly as well. And again, it is not retroactive, but, another point that you triggered for me is just to remind everyone that's listening today, too, that this is actually just a meeting about determining which BDRs we will request to be written. Obviously, when we get to, so that these BDRs would come from the committee, but then there's the extensive and robust work that goes on through full discourse and discussion that happens when we're in session. We're just talking about a BDR with ideas enough to build a bill draft request, but that the decisions and votes made today are not voting, are not implementing any kind of laws, but actually just requesting for that bill to be written. So hopefully that clarifies it for everyone else watching today. So thank you for just kind of reminded me to say that. Are there any other questions? Okay, not seeing any questions, I'll accept a motion from. So moved. Thank you. So I have a motion from, thank you, I drew a complete blank right there. From Senator Lang, and I have a second from Assemblywoman Carlton. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, not seeing any, I will take a vote. I'm sorry, Assemblywoman Dickman, did you have a comment?
Just a quick one. I will support doing this BDR, but I'd like to reserve, right as the bill comes out. If it's not clarified that this is not retroactive, then I could not support it. And I didn't see that anywhere in here, so I hope it's written that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman, and of course, you reserve the right once we get up to Carson. And while it may not be written specifically, if you compare the revised to the original, the language was removed. So the language was removed that it's not retroactive.
Okay, thank you.
So will not be included in that BDR, but thank you for that. Any further comments? Assemblyman Matthews?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just that I too had some concerns about the way this was initially put together, but with the clarification regarding retroactivity, I'll also be supporting it today. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, let's take our vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, and the motion passes unanimously. With that, we will move on to our second item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Haley Prohl, Committee Policy Analyst. Recommendation A2 is to send a letter to Nevada's county clerks reminding them that NRS 293B.1045 prohibits the purchase or lease of a mechanical voting system for use in any election in the state unless the system is approved by the Secretary of State. This was recommended by the committee's chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And just a little background on this one is we had originally thought that there was a need for this, and then when it was researched, it's actually already in the NRS. But when we're talking about the voting systems approved by the Secretary of State, so we know the Secretary of State went through an extensive process to go through and vet different companies and machines. And of course, all of those that basically work anywhere these days know that when it comes to leasing technology and machines, that you want to make sure that you're able to support it and make sure that, of course, the technology offers the service that you need. So there is, I believe, a list of 6 different companies that Secretary of State has vetted. So they're determined their not just quality, but also our ability to support it. So this would just be a letter reminding counties that the requirement is that for any machines they purchase, because again, they're not required to go with one particular company, they have a choice, but that to make sure that it's on that approved list. With that, do we have any questions? Senator Gansert?
Thank you, Chair. In just looking at this, I'm going to support it, but it just seems like the letter should be coming from the Secretary of State, not from the legislature. So it just, since we're just, it sounds like it's already in statute and it's a reminder. So I don't think it hurts for us to send a letter, but it does seem like that's the job of the Secretary of State. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, not seeing any, I will take a motion. So moved. Okay, so I have a motion from Assemblywoman Carlton and a second from Assemblywoman Gonzalez. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Assemblywoman, okay, thank you, Assemblywoman Dickman. Anyone opposed? And again, it passes unanimously. Thank you. On to our next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Haley Prohl, Committee Policy Analyst. Moving on to topic D, which is voting by members of tribal nations. Recommendation B3 is to request the drafting of a bill to require county clerks to establish and maintain working relationships with tribal nations within the county's jurisdiction and allow a tribal nation to submit a request to the Secretary of State for a tribal identification or ID card to be recognized and accepted through Nevada's online voter registration. This recommendation was developed by the committee's chair and committee staff in response to testimony provided by the Nevada Indian Commission at the April 29th meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Committee members, do we have any questions? Okay, not seeing any questions, I will go ahead and take a motion. Thank you. We have a motion from Assemblywoman Carlton. Do we have a second? Second from Assemblywoman Gonzalez. Any further discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, I will go ahead and let's take our vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? And with that, the motion passes. Our next item, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Haley Prohl, Committee Policy Analyst. Recommendation B4 is to send a letter to the Secretary of State and the Nevada Indian Commission requesting their collaboration to provide photocopies of tribal ID cards to county election administrators to facilitate compliance with existing state law, which provides for the acceptance of a tribal ID card as a valid form of identification for in-person voter registration. And again, this recommendation was developed by the committee's chair and committee staff in response to testimony provided by the Nevada Indian Commission at the April 29th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, do we have any questions? Not seeing any questions, I will go ahead and take a motion. We have a motion from Assemblywoman Carlton. Do I have a second? Second. A second from Senator Lang. Any further discussion? All right, let's go ahead and move to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And again, the motion passes. Next item, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Haley Prohl, Committee Policy Analyst. We are now on topic C, voting by persons with disabilities. Recommendation C5 is to request the drafting of a bill to require county election administrators, including county clerks and election board officers, to be trained on how to operate accessible voting systems compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 in order to assist voters who have difficulty using such voting systems, require a minimum of 2 accessible voting systems at a voting site, and provide for the establishment of more than 2 accessible voting systems at a voting site, if deemed necessary by the county clerk to accommodate the expected number of voters with disabilities at the voting site, and require ballots that are cast in person at polling sites to be cast by a voting machine. And this recommendation was developed by the committee's chair and committee staff in response to testimony provided by the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities and the Nevada Disability Advocacy and Law Center at the April 29th meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Prohl. Committee members, do we have any questions? Senator Gansert?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I'm looking at 5C, require ballots that are cast in person at polling sites be cast by a voting machine. So we have some counties that may want to have people cast manually or count manually. And I don't know why that's 5C is in with disabilities, because I agree with A and B, of course, but C, we want to make sure that, again, people have access. And so when somebody's casting a ballot at a polling site, they actually might just be putting it in the box because they use their mail ballot and bubbled it, and then they drop it in the box. So that's not a voting machine. So the language right there precludes them from casting a ballot, which would be delivering a ballot too, at a site. So I guess it just seems like it's conflicting maybe the intent, because I think we all want people to be able to vote. So maybe I can get a little more background on that, why that's part of this bill draft request.
Haley Prohl, Committee Policy Analyst. A little background on why this is included. Some testimony from the April 29th meeting indicated that paper ballots are not accessible to persons with a visual impairment or a disability that implicates dexterity or reading. And even if there is still one accessible voting machine at a polling place, votes cast through this machine will be easily identifiable because they look different than a paper ballot. So it risks the privacy of individuals with disabilities. And then additionally, there would be the potential issue of who would determine whether voters have a disability sufficient to use the one machine. And so that's just background on the testimony. And then in response to the mail-in ballots, the intent was not to preclude those, and that the casting of the ballot would be when the voter is essentially marking their ballot and they are just dropping it off at the polling site. But if legal has any additional clarification, I would defer to them as well on that. Thank you.
Erin Sturdivant, Legislative Council Bureau. Just to add some more information, mail ballot is a defined term for the chapter. So if we say ballot in one of the recommendations, that would be limited to ballots and would not include mail ballots unless the committee specifically asked for a recommendation to apply to mail ballots. So in this case, the mail ballot, as Haley said, could still be dropped off at the voting site, and the recommendation would only apply to voting in person using at the site. And we would certainly draft so as to be consistent with what the committee decides on today. Thank you.
So again, just going back to, I think someone should be able to fill out their ballot and have a means of confidentially turning it in if we already have a mail ballot system. So I want to make sure this doesn't preclude people from potentially bubbling a ballot and then having a confidential way of submitting it. And again, I don't know if this is really intended just for people with disabilities, or if this is trying to say that no one can go to a polling place and bubble their ballot and turn it in a confidential manner.
Legal, would you like to respond to that? So I think the question is specifically, can a voter still walk into a polling place and fill in their own mail-in ballot while they're standing there, secure it in the envelope, and then drop it off in the box?
Erin Sturdivant, Legislative Council Bureau. There would be no, I don't understand this recommendation to prevent that. Again, it ultimately depends on what the committee decides today, what policy you choose. But if the intent is you can go into any voting site during voting and also fill out your mail-in ballot, then we can certainly make sure that is clear when drafting.
Well, you differentiated between mail-in ballots and ballots, and then I appreciate the chair who converted my confidential way of turning it in into a mail-in ballot, but I don't know that somebody's going to have their envelope and everything to go. So anyway, I understand this is just a bill draft request, but I want to make sure people have access to voting. I don't want to suppress anyone's vote. And so I'm not going to support this because I'm not really clear if this disallows anyone from casting a ballot in person if they choose to. And again, they'd have to have a confidential way of doing it. So I'd rather just say you can cast a ballot in a confidential manner versus you can't cast a ballot if you're walking in and trying to do it and not use the machine. So I'm not going to support it because I think C needs to be clarified to make sure everybody can vote, whether or not they bring their mail-in envelope or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblywoman Dickman, do you still have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to suggest using the word require. There may be could there not be persons with disabilities who do not want to use a machine? Then we'd be precluding certain people from voting. So I kind of agree with the senator. This would have to be clarified a lot for me to support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. And as I read the language, we're requiring the machines are there. We're not requiring the individuals to use the machines, but that the machines are there available for individuals who need and choose to use it. Is that correct? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Assemblywoman Carlton. Oh, I'm sorry.
it says that it's required to cast a vote. So that's the people casting votes, right?
It limits casting at the polling site to be cast by a voting machine only. So it does-
Senator Gansert. Thank you. Thank you, Assemblywoman Dickman. And Assemblywoman Carlton.
And thank you, Madam Chair. When I read this, I guess I was thinking in the disability world and some of the comments that we've heard about not being able to read a regular type ballot. And some of these machines are geared for folks with disabilities so that they can actually cast a real ballot. So I see this as more access to folks being able to cast a ballot so that if they walk in, that there has to be a machine available for them so that they know, so that they can actually cast a ballot. If I'm misinterpreting this, I don't see I guess I'm a little confused by the context. To me, a mail ballot is a mail ballot and casting a ballot is casting a ballot. So they're two different worlds, two different NRS. And I just think folks that have a special needs or disability need to have access to a voting machine. And there are places where they show up and there isn't one and they have to go someplace else. So I see this as making sure that no matter what, since we have poll books now and you can show up wherever you want to vote, that if you have a special need or disability, there's a machine there for you. So I see it as an access issue.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Carlton. Any additional questions or comments? Okay, and with that, I will go ahead and take a motion. We have a motion from Assemblywoman Carlton. A second? A second from Senator Lang. Let's go ahead and take our vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
Nay.
So we have,
I had a comment too. I didn't know if you were doing discussion between the motion and the vote.
okay, can we make the comment right after the vote? Because we're in the middle of the vote, Senator? So I see Senator Gansert is opposed and Assemblywoman Dickman is opposed and Assemblyman Matthews. Okay, thank you. Please proceed with your comment, Senator.
Thank you. I appreciate that. When I look at this request, A and B is absolutely about individuals with disabilities, and we want to make sure they have access to voting machines and to any system that they need to be able to vote. When I look at C again, C does not relate to folks with disabilities. It just has plain language that says requires ballots that are cast in person to be cast by a voting machine, and that's why I'm opposing this. It's not about disabilities because we want to make sure they have access, but I think 5C could suppress some people from voting, and so that's why I was a no on the bill draft. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Haley Prohl, Committee Policy Analyst with the Research Division of LCB. I believe this is our final recommendation under Topic D, the Interim Committee Structure of the Legislature. Recommendation D6 is to request a drafting of a bill to revise provisions relating to the interim committee structure of the legislature as follows. Provide that in the vacancy of a chair, the vice chair shall become acting chair until the chair is appointed. Clarify that alternates should be of the same party if a committee member cannot attend a meeting. Transfer the duties to evaluate and review issues relating to governmental purchasing, including without limitation, the review of recommendations from the Commission to Study Governmental Purchasing from the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections to the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Government Affairs. Require the biennial report report on recommendations for legislation relating to governmental purchasing to be submitted to the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Government Affairs and not the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. Repeal the requirement that the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Health and Human Services review regulations related to healthcare. And finally, revise the date that a teacher who wishes to serve on the Nevada State Teacher Recruitment and Retention Advisory Task Force must submit an application to the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Education from January 15th of an even-numbered year to December 1st of an odd-numbered year. And this was recommended by the committee's chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. A little background on this bill. It is not my general practice to bring up BDR requests for issues and topics that we haven't discussed and vetted necessarily throughout the interim committee. Where this stems from is that we know that our interim committees are operating. This is the first interim session that we're operating under the bill, under the new structure. And so there's often, as we continue, I don't want to say the unintended consequences. I feel the interims have been running smoothly, but some of those areas that could be tweaked and improved. And so this was an opportunity for us, those things, now that we're in hindsight, that would actually improve the interim structure. With that, it was open up to not just committee members, but also from the perspective of LCB, things on the back end that they see would help their work actually run smoother. We were submitted some recommendations from some of the subcommittees as well that also could be included in this. So this is really, and when we've discussed earlier about the process, once we get to Carson, when we have more time, as the bills are actually being discussed and really vetted, that there could be more opportunity, because what this really is, now that we would have fulfilled one entire interim session under the new law, but again, just improving it. So that's why it also seems like maybe it's a hodgepodge of different issues, but that's really where it stems from. As Assemblywoman Carlton said, it's going to be a cleanup bill. I guess that was a lot quicker way to say it, but it's going to be a cleanup bill. So with that, I'll take any questions or comments. Senator Gansard.
Thank you, Chair. You know, my question was about 6E. I think I appreciate the background that you just gave, and that makes a lot of sense because we need to move things around and just clean up. But when I looked at 6E, repeal the requirement that the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Health and Human Services review regulations related to health care, and then NRS 233B.063 is referenced. I mean, that NRS basically just says if an agency has regs, it needs to be, potentially it can be reviewed by the LCB and adjusted, amended. So I don't know where that one, I want some background on why that one's there. And do other interim committees, are they also required to review regulations that would say on education? So does the interim committee on education, are they required to review regulations on education and so forth? So I'm trying to figure out why that's in there.
Those were my exact questions as well, Senator, when the recommendation came. And I do know from serving on other committees, education specifically, that actually we're not required to review those regulations. But with that, I'll let Ms. Prohl continue to respond to your question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Haley Prohl, Committee Policy Analyst. So it is unique to the Health and Human Services Committee to review regulations, and my understanding is this requirement was carried over from the former Legislative Committee on Healthcare, and they had this requirement before the Legislative Commission was reviewing regulations. But now that the Legislative Commission does review regulations, the review of healthcare-related regulations by the former Legislative Committee on Healthcare and now the new Interim Committee on Health and Human Services could be seen as a redundant process. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I can ask one more question, do any other committees review regs related to the the subject matter that they address. So I think my example earlier was education. Do any of the other committees and interim committees review regs like that?
My understanding is no, but I would defer to legal counsel on that.
Erin Sturdivant, Legislative Council Bureau. No other interim committee reviews regulations that I'm aware of. The only other similar process is for mining regulations to be reviewed, though I'm not sure that board actually exists anymore, but that's the only other comparable requirement I'm aware of.
Thank you. I appreciate the answers.
Thank you for that. Any additional questions? Senator Lang.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about 6A and the vacancy of a chair. Is there language already that says in the vacancy of a chair that the new chair would be appointed out of the same house and the same party? I think you deal with the same party down below for alternates, but I'm just curious.
That's an interesting area that, again, had not been defined in the new law. So what this would is it would go until the Leg Commission could appoint someone. But again, making sure, because right now, and that's the whole reason we have a vice chair, right? So that the vice chair can step up and step in when necessary so that they could step in until another chair was appointed. But again, it would be, I can see in the, yes, from the same majority party and the same house, because that is specific to the interims.
Okay, thank you. And so it would be appointed by the Leg Commission then, or would it be appointed by the leader in that house?
It would be approved by the Leg Commission.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any additional questions? Okay, not seeing any additional questions. I will take a motion. Okay, we have a motion from Assemblywoman Gonzalez. Any second? We have a second from Senator Donate. Any further discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, not seeing anyone in opposition, the motion passes. Thank you, everyone, all committee members today for your votes and for your valuable discourse on the items. We will close that agenda item and move on to our final agenda item, which is public comment. Again, everyone will have the opportunity to speak for 2 minutes. We ask that you state your name clearly for the record and spell it so that it will be correct in the minutes. Those who wish to dial in right now can dial 1-669-900-6833. When prompted for the meeting ID, please enter 896-9214-3550. Then press pound. Broadcast and production services will indicate when it is your turn to speak. So, not seeing anyone come forward here in Grant Sawyer, here in Las Vegas. Assemblywoman Dickman, is there anyone there in Carson City?
No one left.
That is approached?
No one left.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Broadcasting. Is there anyone on the line?
Thank you, Chair. To participate in public comment, please press *9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Again, if you wish to participate in public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller, you're unmuted.
Good
Go ahead.
afternoon. Hi. This is Dora Martinez, DORA-MARTINEZ, representing the disabled group of Nevada. I would like to thank this committee and let you all know that the Assembly Bill 121 is very much in use, and I promise you it will be in use this coming election. I am really volunteering my time to help people with disability that would choose to use this, the NVEs program that you all passed. It is a law now that for people with disability to vote independently in their homes using their preferred accessible computer. And today there was a meeting at the, please hang on, I'm reading my Braille notes. So there was a meeting at the Advisory Committee on Participatory Democracy. So the NVEs, military voters, 69 folks, disabled voters who use the system, 150, overseas voters, 133. And this is a new system, so we are really publicizing it, at least on my Twitter and Facebook. But I want to thank all of you guys and ladies, gorgeous women, for passing this bill. Thank you, and please stay hydrated. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the reminder to stay hydrated. Broadcasting, do we have anyone else on the line?
Yes, sure. One moment, please. Caller with the last three digits of 343, please press *6 on your end to unmute. Again, caller with the last three digits of 343, please press *6 on your end to unmute.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Doug Goodman, D-O-U-G-G-O-O-D-M-A-N. I am the founder, executive director of Nevadans for Election Reform. You should have a copy of my public comment in your packet, and so I won't go over that, but it's very important that Nevada has uniform standardized voting practices. Doing top-down voter registration is one indication of the importance the legislature recognizes that. And so my comment, which I'm sorry was submitted too late for this committee to consider, has to do with change, a very small change to NRS 293B.050. And I'm hoping that this is something that will individual legislators will consider, or perhaps the full Leg Ops committees during the regular session. And so I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman, and I do want to assure you that your comment has been printed and submitted to us. Our committee staff always do an excellent job of making sure all of the public comments and submissions are given to us. So thank you with that.
If you recently joined the call and would like to participate in public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no additional callers who wish to speak at this time.
Okay, thank you so much for that. With that, I will go ahead and close public comment. Just a few final comments I have. First, I'd like to give a genuine heartfelt thanks to our committee members. Thank you all so much for your work, especially it's so good to see you, Senator Lang. And for those that have filled in, like Senator Donate tonight, I also thank you for being flexible and agreeing to a 4 p.m. meeting. That doesn't always sound, especially for a work session, like something desirable, but it worked out efficiently. And thank you for everyone who was able to participate in a 4 p.m. meeting. Also, thank you to the Legislative Council Bureau staff, including our own committee staff and Ms. Pearl, who's done an excellent, fine job at keeping us all kind of moving forward. And as well as broadcasting and production services, which again have just become so essential to how we operate, not just in the legislature, but really in the world now. Thank you for all your services, as well as fiscal, legal, and research division, because again, none of this, I always say, you know, it's just like watching a movie. You may see actors on stage, but there were 200 people behind the scenes that it took to get. And I would love if we had 200 people. We don't actually have 200 people on our committee, but there are people behind the scenes that you don't see or hear from that keep everything working smoothly and efficiently. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to members. Thank you for the robust discussions, and to all of Nevadans that participate and continue to call in and make public comment. It's been an honor to chair this committee during the interim. And with that, I know I will see y'all soon and again and frequently and often. And with that, I will go ahead and close. This is our final meeting for the interim committee for legislative operations and elections. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Madam Chair. Good.